Hello, this episode is going to be a review of my Strandberg Boden, which to the best of my knowledge is still in its stock condition. I did purchase it second hand and it is therefore also not a current model because they do update the Boden from time to time. I have done the checking I'm able to do that the spec of this guitar is still current in the senses that I'm going to talk about it, but I may be wrong about what the current one is, and so some of my criticisms or equally some of my praise of this instrument may turn out to be inappropriate. If it is shown to me that what I've said is no longer validly useful for current model Bodens, I will put pin a comment in the comment section with corrections. So this is my Strandberg Boden. I bought it second hand. I was trying to make for a while a headless version of my signature guitar body. Serendipitously, I saw one of these on some other guitar YouTube channel and recognized it as being actually quite similar to my prototype in silhouette, and it is of course headless. So I thought I would buy one to see how it matches up to my specific requirements and in general as a guitar, because if it was perfectly a commercially made version of my custom thing, only already headless, I would have to do no further work. I'll play us in on this and then we'll talk about whether that worked out. The retail price on one of these new in the UK at the moment is £1,500, so it's 3 times as expensive as that PRS SE that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. But more importantly, as a sort of deterrent factor, in case you've never seen one of these before, at the time I bought it at least, it was only available with the fan frets, and I'd never played fan frets on any instrument at that point, so I didn't know how that was going to affect my playing. It's only available as a 24 fret design, and for reasons that may or may not stand up to inspection, I prefer generally 22 fret guitars. And most critically, it has this sort of half a hexagon style back of the neck. Now people will tell you that this starts in the middle and moves towards the treble side as you go towards the dusty end of the neck. I don't think that's the right way to think about it. What I think happens is it starts coincidentally in the middle, but it stays the same distance from the treble side all the way down. So this side becomes longer, but it's these two dimensions pretty much remain constant. Strandberg say that is for ergonomic reasons. Ergonomically, I find it actually quite nice for a lot of purposes. If you remember from the previous episode where I did my D over F sharp with thumb on the low E, I can only just about get there at this end of the neck. I certainly cannot get my thumb onto the A string. So if the things you like to play involve muting these two strings with your thumb, definitely try one before you go to the lengths of purchasing one. Or if you're trying to mute and fret up this end, I don't think I can get my thumb all the way round there. Now, it's interesting that this is entirely due to the shape. It's not because the neck is itself fat. In use, to me, it feels similar to like not an ultra thin like modern shredder's neck, but it's like a fairly normal neck depth in sensation to play. But as I say, I cannot get my hand around it because of the angles of things. I can't. It's effectively larger than the chunkiest neck I've got on any of my other guitars. My technique doesn't involve a lot of that wraparound thumb muting, so honestly, this doesn't bother me at all. But it is something I think you should be aware of. I see online a lot of people asking, is it hard to switch between guitars with fan frets and not? Personally, I have stopped thinking about it and it doesn't seem to be a problem for me. I can see where if I was trying to make complicated chord shapes up this end of the fretboard, it would matter a lot more. But from like here to here, there's actually not that much fanning going on. It's not radically different from a parallel frets, and I find I don't need to make any adaptation in my playing to play this. Now let's talk about the other consequences of making a fan fret guitar. Somewhere around the middle here, like maybe this between these two strings, is a kind of normal scale length, and that means this high E string is a shorter scale length than most of my guitars, and this low E string is a longer scale length than most of my guitars. One of the consequences of that is the gap on these frets up here is narrower than it would be on one of my other guitars. So I've got slightly less space for my fingers. So I've got here 2 more notes I can, in theory, play, but in practice, my fingers are significantly bigger than that fret hole. So if I try to get my finger behind these higher frets, because of the shorter scale length, I find it much harder to find that place where I've got enough downward pressure on the string to cause the note to be fretted, and I'm not sort of got a bit of finger skin overlapping the fret to partially mute it. I'll try and demo that in a bit. One of the things I could do about that, and I may yet decide to do, is try and scallop this fretboard for like the top 5 or 6 frets for these higher strings at least, provide a bit of relief so that the excess finger skin can go into the scallop rather than hanging over the fret either side. Now let's talk about how you string this up and tune it. On balance, this is a worse system than a normal guitar, in my opinion. I mean, obviously it has the advantage that the overall instrument can be shorter and there's less weight out here, and there's no chance of the headstock breaking off because there already isn't one. Suppose that a string breaks and you're going to replace it. So let's say the high E breaks. What's going to happen is you need to find the correct Allen key to open this machine screw here to remove the old string from that end, and you're going to push the ball end out of this end of the tuner. Then you're going to have to reset the tuner. On a normal guitar you can turn it an infinite number of times and it doesn't change anything. This has a limited travel. It can only be screwed in or out so far, and you need to move the screw, that the end of the thing that retains the ball end of the string, back towards the front of the tuner when you replace the string. Otherwise you will run out of tuning travel and you won't be able to tune the guitar. So you have to do that. Then what you do, you stick the string through here, fish it over the bridge, which is a little bit tricky, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Push it through the nut, through this retaining thing, tighten that down again with your Allen key, snip off the end. So far we've needed an Allen key up here that we wouldn't have needed on a normal guitar, but otherwise and we've had to reset the tuner at this end, but otherwise it's not so much trouble. But the thing is, the tuner at this end, this bit that you have to turn is only slightly less than a centimetre in diameter, and there's quite a lot of static resistance to you turning it. So in order to overcome that, you'll build up quite a bit of a torque onto that thing, such that when the static friction stops impeding you, it's going to move this tuning thing like 1/8 of a revolution at least. And on some of these strings, that's enough to go from slightly flat to very sharp, and it becomes very difficult to find the exact tuning you're looking for unless you use another big Allen key in here to give you a bit more leverage and overcome that jerking issue as you apply torque with your fingers. One of the good things about it is the part of the string that you've tuned is that long, and the part of the string that is under tension but not part of the tuning is only like 1 inch or so. And that means when you've tuned this part, there's not a lot of scope, and also the string path is really got the minimum required break in it to function correctly. So there's not a lot of chance for there to become a mismatch in the tension between one side of the bridge and the other, or between one side of the nut and the other. So once it's tuned, the whole string is probably at that same tension, and so your tuning doesn't tend to drift as much as it would on a conventional guitar with a headstock. If you're asking me like what would stop me gigging with one of these, it would be if a string breaks, I can't fix it fast enough to be ready to go for the next song, is my concern with this. I'm going to need a spare guitar, whereas if I take my prototype or the yellow Strat type thing or the Jazz Monster, which have locking tuners on them, I can put a new string on that and tune it up before I found the Allen key to take the old string off of this guitar. So there's no contest there for me in terms of like stress levels and what would I be worried about at a gig. You're obviously entitled to have your own risk appetite and your own way of thinking about it, but that is what worries me about this. Let's talk about some other of the physical elements of the design. I do not like this strap button being on the back side of the guitar. I would very much prefer it to be here, because all of my other guitars, so certainly everything I own and everything I've ever owned except the Gibson SG, has the buttons opposing. And the reason that matters is I like to put shallow locking strap buttons on all of my guitars so that I don't feel like I'm worried about them falling off me if I'm playing them stood up. And therefore I've got the locks on the straps such that they work with opposing buttons. And I don't want to have to keep some straps around with one of the locks the other way round so I can play this guitar. I mean, the other thing is those strap locks have a bit that pokes out. And if it pokes out this way and this way, then who cares? When it's poking out this way and is into your body, that's quite bad. Speaking of which, one of the things I would do with my guitars is take them unplugged or perhaps with a headphone plug-in amp and play them on the couch. And if you're sat next to someone on the couch, it's nicer to be able to play like that. I'll put it on my leg like this with the headstock upwards. It's quite a nice ramp that you can do that with here. So I'm not poking my wife in the eye as I'm messing around on the couch of an evening. But if I do that and then lean it back against my body, this strap button is now poking me, usually in the sternum, but I won't demonstrate that because it will hit the lav mic. But it's quite painful, and it just could be not there and it could be here, and then that would solve those two problems that I have with this. If I'm being picky, and I am going to be picky because this is a very expensive instrument, these edges here are relatively, like, they're not sharp in the you could cut yourself, but they're quite hard edges, hard corners, so you can find yourself with red marks on your leg from where it's become a pressure point if you're playing it for a while at not an ideal angle. Like, I will usually hold it like this, which means the front isn't touching my leg and I'm getting a real hard edge of the back poking into my leg. The finish is not too slippery. It's not anything like the car paint job type guitars where it would just slide off your leg if you were to use it like that, so that's good. This edge here, so there's a sort of token chamfer. Compared to my custom guitars, there would be another chamfer here. This one would be deeper, and then also this edge would be rounded over so that it doesn't dig into your arm. When I've been playing this for a while, this little curvature, it helps for sure, but it's still much less comfortable and much less ergonomic than it could have been. Now, I don't know if that's because they have prioritized keeping the aesthetic integrity of the maple cap and this is the limit of how much they can bend that wood, or why they've made that choice, but I personally wish they had made a different choice. The rib cut is very wide. For my taste, it could go down a little bit further into the body, like maybe to there. and perhaps a little bit deeper to just provide a little bit more relief when you're wanting it like that. It's much better than a guitar with no rib cut, but it's not quite as cozy as it can be. There's no commercial guitar I've seen that gets this right, but if we are comparing this to my custom shapes and saying this is a substitute for me making one of my custom bodies but headless, this is not a good handle, and it could be carved to be a good handle, but it has not been done. That's my criticisms of the body style. What's disappointing to me is a lot of those are things that I think anyone would notice. All of them obviously could be changed if you wanted to make different choices about what you were doing. I'd like to argue that the strat button is kind of one that everyone would benefit from if they were to change that. The rest of them, I can agree that they're subjective. Now let's talk about the electronics. These are the original stock pickups. I have adjusted the heights to standard spec for humbuckers. They sound great in my opinion. We've got 5-way switching, so we'll go from the bridge end. So here it's the humbucker in the bridge. Position 2, I believe, is the coils without screws, so these closer to coils to each other. And I've checked that. I'll try and remember to demo all this in a sound section in a moment, but that does give you that self-interfering kind of notch filter effect you get in positions 2 and 4 on a Strat. So if you need that for your funk gigs, they've got you covered. Position 3 is the screw coils of both pickups, so it's more like a Telecaster's middle position. The 4th position is only the screw coil of the neck, so it's the only position of the 5 which is one coil at a time. So your only single coil sound is this neck. Only actual single coil sound is this neck pickup on its own, and when you get it into the final position, that is obviously the full humbucker on the neck. When you've got all of those kinds of tones on the pickup selector, you're going to have a challenge getting the tone and volume circuitry to work well with all of them. So what you would do if you were having just 2 humbuckers and 3-way switching is one thing. What you would do if you were trying to optimize it for these 2 middle positions where it's split 1 coil each of the humbuckers is another thing, and you could wire those in series so that, or wire all of the humbucker tones in parallel if you wanted to, so that all of those 4 would have the same kind of reactance characteristics. But the one you can't deal with a single tone and volume circuit is all of that to sound good and have the tone and volume controls work, and then the single coil sound to also sound as good as a single coil can sound. So this is a volume control with a treble bleed circuit on it, and this is a standard tone control with just a resistor and a filter capacitor to give you tone and volume, and these appear to be picked value-wise to sound and operate best with the humbucker positions. The treble control works great and everything sounds good in those humbucker positions. It sounds okay in these 2 middle positions. I wouldn't say it sounds as good as those could sound if you were optimizing for that, but it sounds okay. And unfortunately, in position 4, for the neck single coil tone, the tone control knob does not work at all. To add some colour to what I mean by doesn't work at all, when a tone control doesn't work, it tends to go wrong in one of 2 ways. So either when it's all the way up, usually when it's all the way up, it sounds okay. And then as you turn it, either what will happen is you'll turn it down very slightly and suddenly all of your treble is gone. And then the rest of the motion of the control does basically nothing. It's just super dark and there's nothing you can do about it. The other failure mode which is the one we've got here, is fine when it's all the way on. You'll turn it down a bit and nothing perceptible changes. You turn it down a lot more, nothing perceptible changes. And then you get to a point really near the other end of the tone control and suddenly it acts like a switch, and it goes from nothing has changed to all of your treble is gone in a sort of switching behavior. Like if you're ultra careful and have really great touch, you can just about find somewhere in between on this tone control, but it is so hard to do, and I've not been able to find a place where this guitar with new strings on that pickup sounds pleasantly warm but not excessively bright through my usual rig. Obviously I could fix that with EQ in somewhere else in my signal chain, but the point is this is a setup where I plug in literally any of my other guitars or even this guitar on any of its other switches and I can find the tone I'm looking for, and it's just on position 4. This tone control don't work. There are two ways to fix that, and I am disappointed that Strandberg did not choose to do either of those fixes on a guitar this expensive. Now, what I'm going to do to this guitar, and I'm playing it in its unmodified form now, I'm planning to fix it for myself this weekend, but the way I'm planning to fix it is to make this an active preamp guitar. So I will have to have a battery in the casing, and then this tone and volume will be after a buffer, so the difference in reactance between the various pickup settings will no longer be relevant, and that will mean that a single tone and volume setup will work equally well for all of the positions. So that will fix my beef with position 4. It should give me ideally no real change for positions 1 and 5, and it should improve positions 2 and 3 for me as well. I can understand why as a manufacturer you don't want to make the guitar active, because guitarists have an irrational fear of 9-volt batteries, and there seems to be nothing anyone can do about that. So what you could do instead, Strandberg, in your manufacturing, if you happen to be watching this, you could use a fractionally more expensive 5-way switch that switches 2 circuits instead of 1, and you could use stacked tone and volume controls so that as you switch positions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, you switch which of the layers of potentiometers is actually effective. So at one layer you have the current setup you've got here. On a second layer you'll have a setup that is perfect for the 2 middle positions, and on a third layer you'll have a setup that's perfect for the neck pickup. And just as the player does this, internally it rewires, it changes completely the tone volume circuit that's involved, and it's still 2 knobs. Turning it still does the same thing. It should be indistinguishable as a player from the current situation, except that you'll be easier to find the tone you're looking for. And I think for the price you're asking for this instrument, that is a reasonable thing for your players to demand. Overall, I do very much like it. It is well made. It came to me set up very nicely with what felt like 10s on it and a great action. I have changed it to 9s this year, and obviously had to adjust the truss rod very slightly to compensate for that, but it had no trouble. I had no trouble getting it into a nice place for playing. If we're talking as a general guitar, I have no beef with the quality of what they've done what they said they would do, and they've done it to a very high standard. I wish they had chosen to do a better job of the tone control, and I hope that they will do that in the future. I wish that they moved this strat button to the point. Other than that, the rest of my things I would change are to fit me personally ergonomically better. I have the woodworking tools to go and do that stuff, but I'd have to refinish it, and this guitar is beautifully finished. I would not wish to put the time I would need to put in to recreate this finish. I don't know that I would be able to do it at all. So that's the neck humbucker. If I turn the tone control about half a turn, so it's probably now on about 4 out of 10, and play that same cycle again. Hopefully you can hear that's warmed it up quite a lot. It's taken a lot of the harsh brightness off that comes with new strings. So now position 4, which is this one coil here, and tones back on max. I'm listening in the room to my amp chain, and I'm recording DI and cab captures and various other things. Usually I would EQ it to match how it sounded to me in the room. I won't do that because I don't want to hurt anyone. But in the room it's piercingly bright on that pickup on full tone, and I've now turned it to the same place it was just now on the other position, and let's hear it. That's maybe knocked a little bit of the edge off, but it's still too bright for me. If the knob had numbers on it, we're talking about somewhere between 2 and 2.5 is all of the range of tones that I would find acceptable. Whereas on a normal guitar with a normal tone, I'm actually not as fussy as it seems like, but on a normal guitar with a normal functioning tone knob, the range of tones I find acceptable is usually somewhere between 2 and 6. Like anywhere in there I'll be happy enough if it's not hurting me to play it. But yeah, as I say, it's just too narrow of a band for my taste. Like obviously if you're never going to use that position, or you're not a person who ever changes your tone control or whatever, then you don't have this problem with this guitar. But I do change my tone knob position, and I do have that problem. Position 3, which I believe is this one, and again I've put the tone back to max. For me, that's not unpleasantly harsh. This kind of self-filtering between these two pickups has taken a lot of those high frequencies out, and it does sound like it is not the same, obviously, as the middle position on a Telecaster or T-style pickups, but it is tonally actually quite close to that. Like if I was in a mix trying to make that kind of noise, I'd be very happy with that sound. And then here's the plain coils. That sounds to me like it's the Strat Quack position 2 and 4 things. Again, if you're going to get into minutiae of tone matching, is it exactly that? No, it's not. But it's close enough in a mix that I'd be fine with it. And what I wanted this headless kind of guitar for was to travel around with, and then I plug it into my laptop in a hotel in some godforsaken business destination and play some stuff and relax and maybe compose some things. And for that it's really nice to have access to the kind of the big rock and roll tele sound, and to the Strat Quack sound, and to the Les Paul or SG neck sound. I just wish that we had what was as advertised, the kind of Strat neck sound. It's nearly there, but I can't tame it. In case you haven't yet picked up on this, I'm one of those people who gets, like, if something's just terrible, like it's just bad, I don't find that particularly annoying. It's when something is 2 decisions away from having been perfect, which is pretty much where this guitar is. That's what I find so frustrating. Anyway, now bridge, humbucker, I'm expecting this to be too bright with the tone all the way up. And it is. Let's turn it down, like back to sort of where I've shown you the other things. Great functioning tone control. It works, as I said, great on the humbuckers in the middle positions. Those are inherently darker. I don't find I need to turn it down. Let's just try those. So back to the kind of Strat Quack version. So here's the full tone. And here's the roughly 4 out of 10. It's not cut very much out of that highs, I would say. So perhaps they should just do 2 stacked options, and all the 3 single coil middle positions should use the same single coil shootable tone, volume and tone control network. You would need to change both volume and tone, and you would need a different treble bleed on the volume, just in case anyone from Strandberg for some reason is still watching this and for some reasons decided to care about this problem. That's how you should fix it. Let's go back to the neck humbucker, and I will try and play you something to show you what I mean about these frets being too close together for my liking. Well, practicing has helped. When I was practicing that earlier, I was getting a success rate of, about 2 in 3 on that hammer-on the fret 24. I think only one really got muted there. I wanted to show you the problem with that by tapping, because I think the kind of player who's going to be up the dusty end of this guitar on the high strings is going to be playing those fast legato things. Like, I wasn't playing fast, obviously, but you get my point. It is frustratingly close to being a S-tier instrument. Mine will soon be an S-tier instrument, because I'm going to move the Strat button, and I'm going to activate my tone and volume controls to fix that issue. I would very much love to do an update video to this in a year or so's time and say, well, Strandberg have fixed everything I wanted them to fix in their new models, and I can now give you an unequivocal recommendation. As it is, because you have to accept the hexagony neck, which for me is no problem, you have to accept the fan frets, which for me is no problem, you have to accept the compromised tone volume controls, the fact it's more difficult to restring and retune, and the fact that it costs £1,500 and you can buy a really good guitar for about £500. I find it hard to suggest to anyone that you should get one of these. And on that negative note, I hate doing negative videos, it's why I don't do too many reviews. But on that negative note, goodbye. Have a good day.